Welcome everyone to Severe Weather Chasers. This is our first update in quite a while. The local weather situation has been reasonably quiet. However, it is starting to ramp up. So let's have a quick look firstly at the 24-hour rainfall figures to 9 o'clock this morning, and we can see that there was some very strong thunderstorm activity to the Western Charters Towers in the inland Burdick and Central Highlands and Coalfields area as well as even as far west as the Central West. The Northern Goldfields and Upper Flinders didn't miss out, so we've got a lot of totals here between 50 and 100 millimetres. In particular, if we focus in the Balfs Creek area, we can see that region particularly saw the most intense thunderstorms probably throughout the state yesterday, with 137 millimetres, where the storms are very slow moving and they do have a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, so they're dumping a lot of rain in a short amount of time. However, as soon as they die, there's enough instability in the atmosphere to create new storms on their flanks. So just where the old storm died, just to the side of that is where new storms develop, and that was going on pretty well throughout the entire night. Even the Townsville area got a little bit or got shaved by a thunderstorm last night, and they continued on in the morning out into the ocean. That's what thunderstorms tend to do. They tend to die out overnight on land, and they tend to ramp up over the ocean. So a lot of the time these coastal regions pick up these storms in a dying trend, and then they hop off the coast, and then they get fed in by a lot of moisture, and they really develop overnight and early in the morning. And so a lot of the times it annoys the coastal residents a little, because they tend to get very small amounts of rain, and then just off the coast the storms bomb. Unfortunately, that's just the way of life. That's just part of living in the tropics, and the severe not the severe weather, but the thunderstorms that occur in the tropics. That's what they just tend to do. Further north, the falls have been a little more patchy. We do still have some very good shower and storm activity in the Northern Goldfields and Upper Flinders, but overall the tablelands has been reasonably benign through the last 24 hours. If we continue a little further south for those viewers, we do have a fair few viewers that watch us from the Mackay to Rocky region. We can see also the Central Highlands and Coalfields tended to do quite well with thunderstorm activity. Moranbah 84 millimetres, which is a great drop for them. And all these regions in through here had isolated 50 to 100 millimetre falls. Less intense thunderstorm activity towards Emerald. However, there were still storms in that region. It's just they didn't fall into gauges in this region here. So much the same today, but perhaps most of the storm activity a little further north, and the focus of activity being on the Central Coast and also the Herbert Burdick and Northern Goldfields, Upper Flinders and the Central Highlands Coalfields today. That's really where we're real focused on. So if we have a look at the analysis chart for 10 AM this morning, we can see a very marked surface trough line right in through here. It's extremely well marked by these isobars. When you see this dip in the isobars, that's a trough system. So every time we see this dip in the isobars, we've got a surface trough system. We've got a nice feed of easterly moisture pushing into that trough system, and that's what's creating the thunderstorm, or that's what has been creating the thunderstorms. You can also see this very strong low here, just to the east of New Zealand, well to the east of Australia, pushing this surface trough system right along the coast, just around about the Rocky region. That'll push slowly northwards. A secondary trough system is likely to develop here in the Coral Sea, but we'll talk about that in a lot more detail shortly. So for today though, all we need to know is we're going to get an easterly feed. We've got this surface trough lingering back through here, and we're going to see a fair scattering of showers and storms with particularly heavy activity inland. Courtesy of Weather Zone, and these guys are great for graphics, so if you like your weather graphics, join up with them. It's free to join. But courtesy of Weather Zone, we're going to have a look at the radar imagery over the last 18 hours to see where these storms developed yesterday and which direction they're moving, and just the general movement of this trough system. So this is the latest imagery that we've got, 11:40. It's probably an hour old by the time you're watching this. And we can see here good thunderstorm activity last night developing, pushing onto towards the east slowly, but you can see here the trough lingering back, so we continued to get showers and storms developing along this trough line throughout the region, and the trough continues to linger back in through here, so anywhere to the northeast of that is likely to see showers and storms again developing through. The latest trace in Charleville shows that the system has probably pushed to the east of Charleville, so now we're looking at storms anywhere in a line from this sort of area where my cursor is. Big thank you to Brisbane Storm Chasers, who allow us to have a look at the atmospheric soundings from the Bureau of Meteorology in a lot more detail. So this is Bureau of Meteorology data of what the atmosphere is doing with height. This red line on the right is the temperature line, and the red line on the left, so that's the temperature line, and that there is your humidity line. So where those lines are very close, we've got a very close to saturated atmosphere. In general, we would expect the atmosphere to cool with height, so we would expect this red line to go from the bottom right to the top left, and we would expect this line here in a good thunderstorm potential day to remain near, or not too far away from the other red line. However, we don't want them exactly close to each other, otherwise that suggests that we're going to get just rain. But basically we see that the Rockhampton sounding, we've got very little or very light winds here at the surface to the mid-levels, so that means that any showers and storms that form are not going to move very fast. When they form a little bit more height to them and a bit more depth, so later on in the afternoon for instance, we would expect that the showers and storms, or particularly the storms, will push from the northwest towards the southeast, and that's what we're seeing on radar at the moment. So we can see just a general trend of this line pushing to in that direction. Now, because the red temperature line, is on to the left of this grey line. See, this grey line tells us if the atmosphere is stable or unstable given some certain surface conditions. So the atmosphere around Rocky is marginally unstable. It's not extremely unstable, and because there's so much moisture in the atmosphere, the temperatures with height can't cool fast enough. So we're going to see showers and maybe some storms there, but we're not going to see extremely intense activity, and the reason being is that we just can't get that violent uplift that we need for those really intense, awesome thunderstorms. Now, don't get me wrong, this particular trace suggests we're going to see some very heavy thunderstorms, just not very intense thunderstorms. If we look further up in their trace, we're not too worried about what happens this high up in the atmosphere. What we're more worried about are these indices. We can see here, due to the amount of or the level of moisture in the atmosphere, we've got the level or the lifted condensation level of 967 millibars, which is very low to the ground. That means cloud bases will be very low today. There's certainly a bit of a cap there that needs to be broken for thunderstorms to develop, and that's why we probably won't see any thunderstorms develop until we get some heating or until the surface trough can push through. We've also got CAPE of 1200, which is quite good for thunderstorm activity. We've got LIs of -2, which is marginal, which is not bad. I mean, it shows that we will get storms, but it just also shows that they're not going to be very intense. And the reason that LI value is not as good as we would hope is because there's so much moisture around Rocky. The total index suggests scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms. The K index of 35 suggests once again we're going to see about a 60 to 70% chance of storms. The sweat index suggests they could possibly be there could be some severity to them. So all up, those indices pretty positive for Rocky to see at least rain, maybe some storms as well. If we take a look at the Townsville trace for this morning, now the Townsville trace is not as positive at the surface because there's a lot of stability in the lower levels of the Townsville atmosphere today. So that means that there's going to have to be a trigger, and the trigger's either going to have to be some fairly intense heat at the surface. So we're going to have to get to about 32, 33, maybe even 34 degrees at the surface to see this cap broken. But I'll tell you what, in this situation, if this cap breaks in Townsville, all hell will break loose this afternoon. So we have some drier air in the lower to mid levels here, which is going to increase the potential for lightning in these thunderstorms. We have extremely good moisture levels throughout the entire parts of the atmosphere. However, the big key is this bit in the yellow box here. See this grey line that my cursor's on there is to the left of the red temperature line. So that means that in this area Townsville is experiencing quite a very stable layer. Okay, so that's a big issue for Townsville, and it needs to be overcome for thunderstorms to develop. If it is overcome, and it's always a matter of if with these sort of things, sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. If this is overcome, we will see some very strong thunderstorms in the Townsville region. So maybe not right over Townsville. Townsville never tends to do real well in this really weak steer setup. However, inland of Townsville, we should see some very good thunderstorm activity develop if we can overcome this stable layer. Now, also to note in Townsville is the winds in the lower to mid levels. We have basically very light winds, so these storms are not going to move very far at all. They're going to be probably more so moving from the northwest, but very light. You could almost outrun them in terms of how fast they're going to be moving. If we have a look at some of the Townsville parameters for this afternoon, we have once again the lifted condensation level 946. That means clouds will form fairly low to the ground. There is that cap of 0.45, but more importantly, there's a bit of convective inhibition because of that stable part where I showed you the grey line being to the left of the temperature line. There's a fair amount of cape, not as much as in Rocky, however that will increase, and I'll show you how that can increase later on today. Lifted indices at -3, totals is better than Rocky's 45, so if we get storms developing today, they will be stronger further north of Rocky than they will be around the Rocky region. The kinetic index suggests that because of that stability at the lower levels, we have a slightly less potential than Rocky to see thunderstorms, and the sweat index of 329 is pretty positive as well for the chance of severe activity. More so the severity. I'm going to show you what the atmosphere is likely to look like around about 3 p.m. So the atmosphere that I showed you was at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now this is what happens once we get a little bit of heating. Do you notice here the key to this part is, remember how this grey line was to the left of the temperature line? It's now to the right of it. So even though we've got that stability in this part of the atmosphere here, we still have enough instability to create the start of the cloud development. And so once we can have enough instability to beat, or enough heat to beat that capping inversion, look at this amount of instability in here. So this entire region between the grey line and the temperature line in this area is the available energy and available instability for storms to form. And so later on this afternoon we will likely see an explosion of thunderstorm activity, particularly to the inland of Townsville. Now these are just some indices of what we can expect later on this afternoon. You see those Cape values of almost 2,500 joules of energy available for storms to form, and lifted indices of -5.5, which suggests severe thunderstorm activity and severe thunderstorm potential, severe storm formation potential. And we've got continuing high sweat indices. So basically we can see that in this situation, if Townsville can get to a top of 31 degrees, and even inland of Townsville can get to a top of 31 plus degrees, we are very likely to see thunderstorm activity today. If we look at the latest GFS modelling for the next 24 to 48 hours, and we have a look at particularly the precipitation side of things, you can see that there's two areas of maximal rainfall expected, or maybe three you could call. The northern Goldfields and Upper Flinders, this is till 4 p.m. today, around the Moranbah area, and then just to the west of Rocky or northwest of Rocky. So we're looking at three hotspot areas early to mid-afternoon today. And then if we continue on, we can see here the continual area is now over the northern Goldfields, Upper Flinders, just one elongated line of activity through here and pushing in. That's along or just to the east of the trough line. So looking at some very good rainfall to the west of Moranbah today, and even over the northern Goldfields, Upper Flinders. So that's till 7 p.m. today. If we continue the model simulation to 10 p.m. today, and we can see that once again this area of just an elongated trough line even of just shower and storm activity all through this region. and particularly now heading into Charters Towers, and this is by 10 p.m. tonight, so we're looking at a lot of thunderstorm activity in a line through here this evening. So that is certainly something we need to watch and pay attention to, because there could be some very heavy rainfalls out of this, especially the fact that it's moving so slowly. And then if we continue on to 1 a.m. this morning, and we see that that eases off considerably, because that's what happens to thunderstorms, but we still have a nice little area here to the south of Emerald of enhanced instability, looking at over 2 to 3 inches there in that time period. So this is 4 a.m. now, and we can see we've got some thunderstorm activity off the coast of Townsville, or to the north, well, to the north of Townsville I should say, and over the northern Goldfields, Upper Flinders. That continues. If we look at the Europeans modelling for this afternoon, and the Europeans are a lot more conservative with rainfall estimates, and so it tends to be a little bit more accurate than the global forecasting system or the GFS. So if we look at the European for this afternoon at 4 p.m, we have a lot of thunderstorm activity around Moranbah to Rocky region, where it's either rain and storm or just more general rain. It really doesn't tell us. However, we've also got definite thunderstorm activity through here, the northern Goldfields, just to the north of Hughenden. So if we continue the model simulation to 7 p.m, we see that just general shower and storm, or rain and storm activity, pushing through a line right in through here, through where the trough line would lie, or just to the east of where the trough line would lie. So anywhere east of that region is likely to see showers, storms, and general even rain periods in some parts. If we continue the model simulation then to 10 p.m, and we see the area of real instability and focused instability becomes this region here to the west of Charters Towers, or southwest of Charters Towers, between Charters Towers and Hughenden. We're expecting some very heavy thunderstorm activity there tonight. And if we continue once again the model simulation, 1 a.m, we continue to see very good enhanced thunderstorm activity to the west of Charters Towers. 4 a.m, it all pushes further west, and we see a general clearance. 7 a.m. tomorrow and 10 a.m. tomorrow, we see an increase in shower activity on the coastline by 10 a.m. tomorrow. So basically a very active weather-wise, in very active weather 24 hours coming up. And if we continue the model simulation to 1 p.m. tomorrow, we see thunderstorms developing a little closer to the coast tomorrow, sort of just to the north of Charters Towers and along the coastal fringe here. And if we continue to 4 p.m, which is our general hotspot, we see that we still have these showers and storms, albeit less intense than today's, but much closer to the coast. And also Charters Towers could get a second dose later on tomorrow as well. Pushing through to 7 p.m, we see the shower and storm activity mostly starting to clear out now from this region down south. And by 10 p.m. tomorrow night, we see basically most of the enhanced shower and storm activity here, or just off the coast to the north of Townsville, where we start to see that northeasterly stream bringing in some very good shower activity. To 1 a.m. on Saturday, and now 4 a.m. on Saturday, we start to see everything starts to become much more coastal, and much less potential for things to develop further inland in that period. A little bit of stability creeping in, but it doesn't last very long, because by Saturday we start to see more shower and storm activity developing. But as we can see here, much closer to the coastal fringe, Saturday 1 p.m, much closer to the coastal fringe, and we see very much enhanced rainfalls through the coast here on this easterly stream, and what will be a surface trough feature coming west from the Coral Sea. So if we just continue going 3 hourly through the model and just have a look at your particular region, you can really see how this trough starts to impact the coastline around about Sunday morning or overnight Saturday. And we're moving on to Sunday at 7, Sunday at 10 a.m, Sunday at 1 p.m, Sunday at 4 p.m, Sunday at 7 p.m, Sunday at 10 p.m, Monday at 1 a.m, Monday at 4 a.m, Monday at 7 a.m, Monday at 10 a.m, Monday at 1 p.m, Monday at 4 p.m, Monday at 7 p.m, Monday at 10 p.m, Tuesday at 1 a.m, Tuesday at 4 a.m, and by this stage we're seeing a general increase in shower activity off the coast, and 10 a.m. on Tuesday, and we do start to see a big clearance inland here. By early next week there's not much happening inland, especially to the south of this surge line that's pushing through just to the north of Townsville by Tuesday 4 p.m, and Tuesday 7 p.m, and Tuesday 10 p.m. is as far as we're going to take this. But you can see there a lot of rain falling in the same regions on this coastline over the next 5 to 6 days, so we're looking at very much enhanced rainfalls. And last thing I'll leave you with is the European and the global forecasting systems basic totals. So this is for the next 6 days rainfall wise, from 0 to 144 hours, issued at 4 a.m. this morning. We can see most of the coastal fringe above 50 millimeters, and some parts of the coastal fringe getting up close to 200 or 300 millimeters in the wet tropics, and basically all the way to Cooktown we see this rainfall. Very much coastal. However, this thunderstorm activity near Charters Towers is really being forecast by both models, enhanced instability in this area, so we could be seeing some very heavy rainfall totals in the next 3 or 4 days near this Charters Towers area. Also around the Emerald area we're looking at enhanced instability, and even through here north of Rocky into the Mackay region on this easterly stream. We're looking at 2 separate regions of extreme rainfall, which is this area here and then this area here. Obviously this one here is the region we need to pay more attention to. However, there is a separate secondary area of intense rainfall expected here. Now both of these models are tipping very similar things, so I'll just show you the European. So this is the European's take. So anywhere that's got this really darkish brown tinge to it is above 6 inches. So it's above about 150 millimeters over the next 6 days. Anywhere with the red is above about 75 to 100 millimeters. Anywhere in this orange is above 50 millimeters. So we're looking at some very intense thunderstorm activity over the next few days in here through the Charters Towers region, and then we're also looking at this entire coastal fringe, basically the entire coastal from well to the north of Cooktown all the way through, even as far as St. Lawrence, with more than 50 millimeters. But this really enhanced region in through here of the North Tropical Coast and Tablelands, even getting as far south as possibly even Townsville, more likely Rolling Stone, is going to see some really intense rainfall in the next 6 days. And this is all on the basis that we don't see a low pressure system developing, and we'll talk about that a little later on as the time gets closer. So this is on the basis that we just see a nice easterly feed with a bit of a surface trough. But as for today, showers and storms in the inland areas, possibly some very heavy falls in through the inland regions between Charters Towers to Moranbah and west to Claremont, and so we're looking at some very intense rainfall in that region. But just generally showers and storms through here. Also, going west to Hughenden. So all this region here needs to pay attention to thunderstorms that form today, because they will be slow moving and they will dump a lot of rain. Thanks for watching this very long update. Hopefully our next update will be much shorter, but it has been a while and we had to bring you up to date with what's going on. Thanks for watching. Remember, swxc.net is our website, or you can join us on Facebook at Severe Weather Chasers. Just look us up. Thank you again.